first start by saying welcome to everyone who just joined us. And thank you so much for joining the College of Education and Human Sciences for this special Giving Tuesday event. My name is Christine Mazie, and I am the Senior AVP for Central Development at the UNM Foundation. And it is a real pleasure to be here with you today. So I want to start by acknowledging that we know that this year has been such a strange one for so many of us, for our country and for the world. And I'm especially grateful for you all attending, despite the fact that we are all being impacted by this global pandemic in a variety of ways. So during this time, like I said, I just want to make sure you all know how grateful we are that you've set aside the time to spend with us. And we want to use this moment to look ahead as well and to think about brighter times and a brighter future. And we want to celebrate the impact that philanthropy has and has had on the college. We're going to use this gathering to share information that we hope will be helpful to supporters who are interested in learning more about how to help the college through endowment giving in the near term or in the future. And our agenda today includes three main parts. The first, we'll share some testimonials from scholarship recipients and donors about their experiences. An overview, the second is an overview of the process for establishing an endowment, and information will be shared on the third piece about planned giving and how planned giving can help you reach your endowment goals. So at the end, we'll have opportunity to take a few questions, but if you have questions all along the way, please feel free to use the chat function so we can address your questions in real time. And because we want to be respectful of your time, we plan to wrap up today's event at 50 minutes after the hour. So before we begin, I want to introduce all of our speakers to you. And then I will do a deeper dive into our first speaker. So let me start with Evelyn Romo. She is a member of the college's alumni chapter and friends board and is a former recipient of the Emma Showman Scholarship. Evelyn is our keynote speaker and will share her experiences as a scholarship recipient and a teacher during the COVID pandemic. Next, I would like to introduce Mary Wolford, my dear friend and colleague, and our MC today, and Senior Director of Development for the college. Third, I would like to introduce Dorothy Graham, another dear friend and a member of the college's alumni chapter and friends board, and an alumna of the counseling program. Dorothy established an endowed scholarship through an IRA charitable rollover. Next, I would like to introduce Wayne Trott, an alumnus of UNM's chemistry department, who established an endowed scholarship in special education in memory of his late brother, Lauren Allen Trott. His wife, Marianne Trott, is the chair of the college's alumni chapter and friends board. And our final presenter today is Bonnie McCleskey, another great colleague, an Associate Vice President of Planned Giving at the UNM Foundation, who will present several case studies about donors who used planned giving to accomplish their goals. So let us begin our program. It is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Evelyn Romo. In May of 2018, Evelyn earned her second degree from the college, a master's degree in secondary education. Evelyn was named New Mexico Teacher of the Year in 2018.
Wonderful.
We are so proud of everything she has accomplished as a teacher and a leader in her field. Evelyn received the Emma Showman Scholarship from the college, which was established through an estate gift. Emma Showman loved children and in the 1930s was a school teacher in eastern New Mexico. One of her greatest loves was teaching English to Spanish-speaking children. Emma Showman lived to age 96 and remembered UNM in her will, establishing this wonderful endowed scholarship. It makes several awards to students in the teaching profession based on the financial need and academic merit of the students. Gifts from estates like this one are often large enough so that they are able to make a scholarship award to a student that is significant in size. And these significant awards are often transformational. Rather than just assisting the student to earn their degree, it can be pivotal in them deciding whether they choose to pursue the degree in the first place. Yvonne will tell us more about the profound positive impact that being a scholarship recipient had on her ability to return to the college for her master's degree. We are tremendously grateful for scholarship gifts like this one. Like the late Emma Showman, our speaker today also loves teaching Spanish. Yvonne teaches Spanish to 9th and 10th graders at Volcano Vista High School on Albuquerque's west side. Please help me to welcome Yvonne Orozco.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I am so
I'm going to give
delighted.
you a little applause for the group.
Thank you. I am delighted to be with you on this Giving Tuesday to share what a profound impact the College of Education and Human Sciences at UNM has had on me. I have grown and achieved new levels in my practice as a teacher in the past few years, especially this year, as we face so much uncertainty amidst the COVID-19 global pandemic. It has been a challenging year, particularly with remote learning. And a couple of weeks ago, I went into my classroom on campus at Volcano Vista as the order to shelter in place was given in our state, because I needed to update my desktop computer, which will only update on the public schools network. And I also needed to pick up the small space heater that I use for my feet while I'm grading, priorities. And I stood in my empty, sanitary smelling classroom, and I thought about how from the span from March to now, it is the longest I have ever been away from learning and teaching in classrooms since I was in kindergarten. Classrooms, schools, universities, learning spaces, they shape so much of who we are. And the College of Education and Human Sciences is a vital space where I became the teacher that I am today. And my story as a teacher has had wonderful moments, but also some grim ones, some challenging ones. And the decision to go back to graduate school was actually during my second year of teaching. And that was a really tough year, a close rival to this pandemic year, because for the first year, most teachers expect to struggle and learn on the job and find out what all the acronyms are, etc. But by the second year, you've thought all along that it's going to get better, and it is often not so. And I struggled with curriculum development and paperwork, classroom management, isolation from other adults, and I started to feel like I had made the wrong choice becoming a teacher. And this was heartbreaking. I had always loved school. And here I was in what I thought was the dream career path for me. And instead, I was crying in my car after school almost every day, thinking about not going back the next day. So I look back at some of my undergraduate work from the college, and I wonder what happened to that young woman who had so earnestly written about her plans for her ideal classroom, her ideal lesson plans, and I had to take action. So I picked up the phone in the middle of the day in my classroom, and I called Dr. Sheldon from our college. And I said, I don't know what I'm doing. And in the long conversation that we had, that is now a blur of my memory, my plea was very simple. Help me remember who I am. And she delivered. She recommended that I look into the college's MARP program. If you have not heard of MARP, you need to look it up because it is amazing. MARP stands for Master of Arts in Reflective Practice, and it has been in development by a few amazing faculty members from the College of Education in the last decade or so. And every cohort that comes out of the 5-semester MARP program has amazing stories of curriculum development, teacher inquiry, and newly found passion for teaching. But each teacher that decides, that makes that decision to go back to school for a master's degree also faces institutional financial dilemmas. Many of my teacher colleagues really struggle with the decision to go back to school, not because they don't have the will, the determination, but because teachers, we already struggle with money. That second year that I was teaching, I was making $30,000 a year. That's it. So to decide to invest a third of that into a master's program is a big commitment to go to graduate school and become a more skilled, more passionate teacher. So I am a proud recipient of the Emma Showman Endowed Scholarship here at the college. And this funding allowed me to make that decision to attend graduate school without hesitation as a full-time teacher. I'm so grateful because I didn't have to worry about the financial burdens that acquiring an advanced degree may bring. I didn't have to take out a loan. I simply just had to focus on being a teacher who loves learning. Once I was part of the wonderful MARP program, I received the best mentoring and support from our amazing faculty, Dr. Marjorie Krebs, Dr. Cheryl Torres, Dr. Laura Hannaford, who's here today, Dr. Kirsty Tyson, and this support extended throughout my service year as State Teacher of the Year, when I struggled to balance leading at the national and state level while also teaching full-time, finishing my master's degree, and becoming a mother. 2018 was a really busy year for me. While I was in MARP as a graduate student, I felt like my teaching was on fire. I was re-energized, I had a purpose, I felt my original inner teacher coming back to the classroom. I started the program in the fall of 2016, and a year later, I was nominated, I applied, and I was selected as the 2018 New Mexico Teacher of the Year. And I have no doubt in my mind that this was due to the way that I started thinking about my teaching, about my students, about our role as co-constructors of knowledge. And since then, like I mentioned, I've become a mother. I have switched schools to be closer to home. I started a local chapter of a teacher advocacy group working for our immigrant communities. I joined other groups doing meaningful work, like the College of Ed Friends and Alumni Board, the Albuquerque Teachers Union, the Hispanic Education Advisory Council. Most importantly, I continue to build meaningful relationships with my students learning the Spanish language and cultures. None of this work is in my own bubble or on my own. I have strong communities and mentors holding me up and keeping me accountable. Dr. Hannaford, who was my advisor during my master's degree, is still my mentor to this day. In fact, we talked this afternoon. And this year, I have undertaken the task of hosting a student teacher from our college for the very first time. Dr. Hannaford has been guiding me as to what it means to be a mentor teacher, how to show others the ropes of teaching through remote learning. And she keeps on reminding me to stay true to myself and uplift the voices of my students who need me to be their advocate and stay true to who I am as a teacher. And that is what your gift to our college does for UNM students, for counselors and nutritionists, athletic trainers, administrators, and of course, teachers. Your gift puts in contact all of these powerhouse leaders in our college with people who are ready to lead our communities to new heights. Because there is so much work to do, I am proud that I'm standing here, sitting here as a teacher in New Mexico. I am grateful that the Emma Showman Endowed Scholarship was a big foundation for that outcome. So I thank you for your continued support of our college. Your contributions matter, they make a difference. And remember that in this time of so much uncertainty, of a time when we are re-examining history and the narratives that we have been taught in learning spaces for generations, there will always be a need for our work, for our passion, for our calling. I want to give a big thank you to the UNM Foundation for the incredible work that they do, particularly to Mary, who has put this wonderful event together today. And thank you for the opportunity to share my testimonial with you.
Thank you, Yvonne. That was just fabulous. Gosh, we're so proud of you. That was very inspiring. I'm going to share my screen with all of you. This presentation is an overview of how to establish your own endowment at UNM. It will cover what an endowment is, how it can be funded with current giving or future giving, how a donor can personalize their endowment, the types of activities at the university that endowments can support, and what information donors can expect to receive from the university after establishing the endowment. What are endowments and how do they help? An endowment is a permanent investment to support the university. Only a portion of the endowment is spent each year. They are helpful because they provide reliable support to the university, and they're invested carefully to grow steadily over time so that their annual spending distributions can outpace inflation. How does an endowment work? The UNM Board of Regents has given the authority for investing the university's endowment to the UNM Foundation Investment Committee. Endowments generate about 4% of their market value each year for a spending distribution. For example, an endowment funded with a $100,000 gift would generate about $4,000 per year for its purpose. An endowment can be funded with a current gift. There are several ways to do this. A gift of $25,000 or more given over a period of 3 years or less is required to establish an endowment. A gift for an endowment is given to the UNM Foundation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit, and these gifts are tax deductible to the extent allowed by law. Endowments can be funded with cash. Some donors simply like to write a check. Others enjoy receiving benefits such as frequent flyer miles by making their gift on a credit card. Other donors prefer an electronic funds transfer from their bank account. And all of these options are available as a lump sum or through installments. These installment gifts can be automated at a donor's direction for the donor's convenience. An endowment can be established with a gift of stock. It's as simple as asking your broker to make a transfer. Gifting highly appreciated stock can help you avoid capital gains tax. And for donors age 70 and a half or older, the IRA charitable rollover is very popular. Dorothy Graham will tell us more about her experience giving this way a little later in the program. An endowment can also be established with real estate. The UNM Foundation Gift Acceptance Committee reviews these potential gifts to determine if they will be accepted. Among other things, the real estate must be able to be sold readily. The most important document related to a new endowment is a gift agreement. The agreement names the endowment. Many donors name an endowment for themselves or in honor or memory of a loved one or mentor. The agreement states specifically how the gift will be used. Every donor works with their development officer. Based on the donor's wishes, the development officer drafts the gift agreement for the donor's review. In the gift agreement, the donor can include requirements and preferences that bind the college to use the funds the way the donor intended. However, the gift agreement is not a legally binding pledge. While scholarships are the most popular types of endowments, there are other activities that are supported by endowments at UNM. Of the distributions from endowments at UNM, each year, 51% of the total dollars are for student support, 23% for faculty support, 15% for programs, and 7% for research. A little later in the presentation, we will provide several examples of current activities other than student scholarships in the college that could be supported by endowments. Let's take a look at a few real-life examples of scholarship criteria. These examples come from 2 donors who will share their testimonials with us as part of this program. For the Lauren Allen Trott Memorial Endowed Scholarship in Special Education, a recipient must be in a graduate degree or a graduate certificate program in special education. The donors stipulated a preference for students who are committed to working with students with motor impairments or other severe disabilities. For the William and Dorothy Graham Scholarship Fund, a recipient must be from California and a student in the College of Education and Human Sciences. The donors stipulated a preference for students who are pursuing careers in teaching or school counseling. We will hear more from each of these donors about their experiences establishing these endowments. Aside from endowments for scholarships, there are 3 other popular activities that endowments can support: faculty, programs, and research. Let's look at an example of each. The Chester C. Travelstead Endowed Faculty Fellowship for Teacher Education is an example of an endowment that supports faculty. Awards like this help to recruit and retain outstanding faculty. Associate Professor Allison Borden of Educational Leadership is one of the current recipients. She's been nationally recognized for her contributions. One of her recent awards is the J.D. Scribner Mentoring Award. Professor Borden earned her PhD from the Harvard University Graduate School of Education. Before that, she spent 25 years in the K-12 education arena as a teacher, principal, and bilingual program director. At the college, she has supervised the dissertation research of 24 graduates in educational leadership. She has also served on the dissertation committees of an additional 25 graduates from the department and other programs in the college. She said she sees her efforts on behalf of doctoral students and pre-tenure faculty as the right thing to do and a way to pay forward for the benefits she received from her mentors. Pollen is the type of program that could be supported by an endowment. The program is run by Associate Professor Sean Secatero, who is among the 10% of faculty in the college who are Native American. The program's goal is to increase the number of licensed school principals serving Native American students in New Mexico. Currently, 11% of the state's population is Native American, but only 3% of licensed principals and educators in our public schools are Native American. 31 students have completed the program, and 87% of those have assumed principal or other leadership positions in Native schools and communities. Next is an example of research that could be supported by an endowment. Growth in math, language, and cognition in children with math difficulties who are English language learners, Bridging the Achievement Gap, is a research project carried out by Professor Lee Swanson. Since nearly 1 in 5 children in Albuquerque public schools is an English language learner, this research is important to the state and the nation. The research has several goals: to determine why some children whose first language is Spanish are lagging behind peers in math, reading, language, and cognitive development; to determine the processes of instruction related to positive growth in these areas for children who are English language learners; to establish valid measures for assessing English language learner children who may be at risk; and to identify children at risk for math disabilities separate from those with learning a second language. What can a donor expect in terms of stewardship after establishing their own endowment? Donors receive an annual financial report on their endowment from the UNM Foundation. In addition, the college sends a note once a year from the recipient of the endowment, giving the donor the opportunity to communicate with the recipient. When possible, the college extends the opportunity for donors and recipients to interact in person or through a video conference. Most importantly, however, donors have the best gift of all: the knowledge that they are helping to create a brighter future. To expand on that, we will now hear from 2 donors about their experiences establishing their endowments. First, I want to introduce Dorothy Graham, who joins us from her home in the Los Angeles area. She is a member of the college's alumni chapter and Friends Board and an alumna of the counseling program. She established an endowed scholarship through an IRA charitable rollover. Dorothy?
Well, thank you very much, Mary. I'm a real California girl, but I came to the University of New Mexico because I was married to this wonderful man, and he wanted to pursue a doctorate degree in Latin American history. And I can remember how he looked at different places. There was Texas and Florida. There were several places, but UNM had an excellent program in Latin American history. So when he came over to New Mexico, it was going to be for a while because it was a PhD program. And I thought, if you can't beat them, join them. So I better do something about moving up and getting a master's. I was working in Los Angeles as a teacher, but I went ahead and pursued a master's in counseling. And when I returned to Los Angeles, I took additional courses and became a school psychologist here. So anyway, I was very successful in making money. I came from a home, my mother used to say, if you could imagine, if you're not getting full interest on your money, honey, it's just as if you're throwing it in the gutter. And I was raised with those principles. My husband could have cared less about money. That was what made him so lovable, is he just was a very genuine, wonderful person who cared about education and literacy and history. So we attended school over, I remember living on Harvard across from the university, and how much we enjoyed it. And we enjoyed the people in New Mexico and just were truly, truly enchanted. So it was a nice thing to think about, giving somebody else from California the opportunity to live and go to school in New Mexico. So it was very easy to establish this endowment with Mary and Christine helping write up what people would have to have in order to do whatever. But the money, now that was my idea. I was supposed to give that money. And now that I've heard you, Yvonne, you were very impressive. And it makes me think, yes, I'd like to give more. I will raise that endowment. You'll see, this is not a good year because we didn't have to take money. People who are over 70 and a half this year actually did not have to make a withdrawal from their IRA accounts. Otherwise, it's kind of interesting. An IRA is a good way to play with money. You can put your money into an IRA, that's before it's taxed. They're taking it out of your salary the whole time you're working. And it will not be taxed until you finally sell or give or do something with that IRA. So you're accumulating what I remember my husband had an annuity, and it was an IRA, and he wasn't making anything on it. He had something in a fixed annuity. And I said, Bill, let me take over your annuity and let me play with it. It was 300,000. I hate to, it sounds like I'm bragging, but it was kind of fun. I made it into $1 million. And it's because when you have this IRA, you're not, when you sell it in an ordinary account, you have to pay taxes on that sale and whatever you gain. But in an IRA, if you don't sell it or take it out, it just sits there. It's accumulating, getting bigger. So you can trade. I can go into a stock account and just trade off. This is losing today. Get rid of it. Let's get a winner. And it's a lot of fun. It's just like a big game. But so this IRA, the main thing about it, then when you become 70 and a half, reality sets in and they say to you, listen, you must take out this amount of money. And the more you've made, the more you have to take out. And then it becomes part of your taxable income. So depending on how much money you've made, you could be at a very high tax rate, which I am. So when I take money out, if I give away $100,000, that's $100,000 I don't have to pay 45% taxes on. So in other words, I'm really not giving all that. I'm taking part of it away from the government, and I'm giving 55,000 on my own. But what a nice gift it is. And it's good both ways around. If you can give away something, keep your tax rate down, that saves you money. And it helps people like Yvonne, and it makes you feel good about this bright future. So the thing that's very important in giving and setting up an endowment from an IRA is that you have people at the university helping you with all the tax numbers and what have you. And the money has to come directly from the IRA account to the person who receives it. It cannot come to you and then you give it to this person. It must go directly out of the IRA account. And then that instead of having to be declared as extra income on your taxes, it is not declared. In other words, you're really not getting a charitable deduction. You're just not having to declare all that extra income that you would normally have to declare as income. So that's the main thing. But it really is a wonderful thing to think that you are doing something to make it a better world. I think that's, if we all thought about things, think about how much better our lives would be. Just think about the greater good for the greater number of people. And to me, in education is just the main thing you can do to improve people in so many ways. I'm very anxious to see the future as far as we are going to have an educator. Biden is married to a teacher, and I think it's going to make a real difference in the White House, that woman will understand what teachers go through. It's not easy. Teaching is not easy. I thought about Yvonne going and getting discouraged the first year. It can be very discouraging, but if you have skills, you can really make things better. So it's very nice to hear your story, and I hope I'm an inspiration for giving money, because what is money? It's only a commodity. I always think of, some people, I had a brother that was worth millions and millions, but he didn't know how to make his life enjoyable with that money. Money is a commodity to make your life and other people's lives better. So the more you can do with it in that way, the better fun it is. So Yvonne, you make me think of how much fun I had giving that I want to do it again. Okay.
Thank you, Dorothy. I like your spirit that money is a way that you can improve the lives of others and have that joy yourself. Thank you. Our second donor testimonial comes from Wayne Trott, an alumnus of UNM's chemistry department, who established an endowed scholarship in special education in memory of his late brother, Lauren Allen Trott. Wayne, would you share your thoughts with us?
I would be glad to. Thank you so much for the opportunity to give you a little bit of backstory on this endowed scholarship. Lauren was an older brother of mine in a family of 6. I was the youngest and he was the next youngest. And he was born in the closing months of World War II. And the story as it came down to me was, number one, that my mother was prone to very rapid deliveries once she got her first kid out of the way. And then at the time, there was a lot of a dearth in the medical availability of personnel. Things were kind of scarce, and the doctor who was to be involved in the delivery was late in getting to the delivery. And at that time, they felt like it was the right thing to do to try to hold off the delivery. In the process, there may well have been some anoxia involved. I know my mother commented that she felt like she would have been better off had she given birth in the car. Now I know that things are kind of complicated in that regard. There may be more to the story than just that. But the bottom line is that my brother was pretty severely impacted from birth by athetoid cerebral palsy. The impact on him was that he was unable to sit or stand without major support. He had challenges in motor control, and he could grasp things, but only after a lot of work trying to overcome involuntary movements and that sort of thing. He had some vocalizations, but he never developed significant speech or communication. My parents tried to take advantage of the available services at the time, but the services, and this is not to knock what they did, but the services at that time for speech, motor development, and education were very limited. And I'll mention a few things that pertain to that in just a few minutes. My parents were resolutely opposed to institutionalizing my brother Lauren. And over time, they developed some creative approaches to enable him to sit upright. He was toilet trained, and they developed other skills such as drinking from a straw. And these are things that they pretty much worked on themselves. There was a significant time burden and psychological impact, as you can well imagine, on the family. And just a few examples of that. One of the things that really I have a very hard time understanding, but at the time my brother was born, my mother was convinced that her situation was entirely unique, that she was the only person in the world who had experienced such a thing. To me, that's amazing, because there's so much more visibility of people with disabilities now. But the bottom line is she felt utterly alone in it. And that was, a big impact for her. Sometime later, I think I was maybe 3 or 4, and my brother was 7 or 8. He needed to have a hip operation at Carey Tingley Hospital down in Truth or Consequences. And I guess the operation went well, but they had a lot of difficulty in actually feeding him. And so I don't remember all the circumstances, but I know that we were gone for a few days, came back, and they felt like that he was practically starving, that they hadn't been able to feed him properly. And so, I mean, these are the kinds of things that are heartbreaking to parents, as you can imagine. Sometime later, he had a psychological test where a psychologist wanted him to blow out a match. With his motor control issues, that's almost an impossible task. And he actually found it amusing and just, started laughing almost uncontrollably. So these are things, the psychologist, I should say, mentioned that he felt like he had no cognition whatsoever. And as you can well imagine, that's extremely hard for a parent to hear something like that, even if you know it's not true, which they did, because he clearly had some receptive language, and there was evidence of appreciable cognition. At the time, as I had mentioned before, there wasn't as much visibility of people with disabilities then, and so it was a thing which caused some embarrassment with my mother in particular, and my parents, and so there was a reluctance to have visitors over and so forth, and that impacted some of our lives as well. However, I mean, I've given you some negative examples of some of the challenges they faced. But there are a lot of good memories too, and I want to mention one because I think it's very important to not leave you the impression that we thought it was all bad, because that's far from the truth. My father was a carpenter, and actually a lot of the things that he developed, like chairs for my brother to sit upright and to sit on the toilet, he developed out of wood, and with no books or anything like that. It was things that he developed out of his own observation and abilities. Well, they decided to buy a cabin property, and so when we went up early on, we actually had a big tent. We all slept in the tent before he actually was able to build the cabin. And it was up in the Conejos Valley. It gets very cold at night. And so one night when we were sleeping all together in this big tent, one after another of us started getting very cold. And we eventually woke each other up, trying to figure out what had all happened to the blankets. And my father finally got up and lit a Coleman lantern. And when the lantern came on, somehow my brother Lauren had managed to take all of the blankets, or grasp most of the blankets. And he had this big pile on top of him. And he was as snug as a bug in the rug. And he was the only one who was asleep. And as you can all imagine, that was quite amusing. And just an example of some very nice memories as well. The bottom line is that Lauren did end up living a very quiet life with the reluctance with visitors and all that, and only occasionally experienced a life outside the family home. He passed away from respiratory complications in 1990. So fast forward to a few years ago, we had already set up, Marianne and I already set up a scholarship in memory of her parents. It's kind of another story for another time, but she suggested that we consider funding another scholarship in memory of my brother. And I felt like that was such an attractive idea. For one thing, the extent to which Lauren might have benefited from modern motor and developmental and speech therapy is really at this point unknown. my suspicion is that he could have benefited a lot, that he would have been able to communicate a lot more than he was able to, and all of that. So, you know, the opportunity to fund motivated graduate students to develop creative approaches to have services for people like that, it was a very attractive thing for me. And one of the things that my wife also mentioned, and I thought was very true, was that it actually provided him an opportunity for having something of a legacy. I mean, all of the rest of us in the family, we had reasonable careers and reasonable success in the careers. I'm sure that under normal circumstances, he would have been in the same situation. But living a quiet life, you know, it's almost no way for his name to be out there. And this is a way for him to have a legacy. And it's a very meaningful thing for us. It's been a pleasure for us to see this scholarship already assist in the education of some really fine students. And it's provided us a great deal of satisfaction. There's more that I could say, but I'd probably use my time. And I thank you for listening.
Thank you, Wayne, for sharing that personal story. Thank you so much. Our last presenter today, and certainly not least, is Bonnie McCleskey, Associate Vice President of Planned Giving at the UNM Foundation, who will present several case studies about donors who have used planned giving to accomplish their goals.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. It's been inspiring to hear everybody's stories and just reminds me why I love my job. So thank you all. I'm going to quickly share my screen here. I have the pleasure of working with donors who are interested in setting up endowments for after they pass away. So they do it in a variety of ways, and I just want to share those today. We're going to start with the most common types and then end up with the most complex types. So I'm going to start off here with talking about a bequest and a will or trust. This is the way the vast majority of people include an endowment in their estate plan. So it's revocable. You can put it in there, but you can take it out in case other things happen in your life. And typically a bequest comes in one of three types. There's a specific sum of money, a percentage of an estate, or a specific asset, such as a house that's going to fund the endowment. So this requires you to create or update your will or trust. So going back to your attorney, sometimes instead of updating the entire thing, you can just add a codicil, which might be a little bit easier on your pocketbook. But if you're already going in, you have maybe a new grandchild being born, and you're already going in to update, this would be a good time to think about possibly adding an endowment or something to charity. And then you would create a gift agreement with the UNM Foundation, which Mary has already spoken about. So my donor example for this is an alumna named Maria, and her husband, they came to me, they had no heirs, but they had both been in separate careers and they did very well for themselves. Maria was an only child, really close to her parents. So she decided to create two endowments, one in each of her parents' names for $250,000 each. So this was what they came to me with, and what they did, their solution, the couple updated their will to leave a specific monetary bequest of $500,000 to UNM that's going to establish two named endowments upon their passing. And then they created the gift agreements with the foundation. So this was a really good solution for them because they already had a will. They just decided to update it. It made a lot of sense for them. Next most common way to do it is through a beneficiary designation. Now, Dorothy was talking about giving through her IRA. And what you can do is you can do that while you're living, like she said, age 70 and a half or above, but you can also make the UNM Foundation or another charity, the beneficiary of any of these types of plans. So you've got retirement plans, financial or brokerage accounts, life insurance policies. It's free to go online and update any of these, so it doesn't cost you anything. It's also revocable, meaning you can change your mind. So if you wanted to say, I want to leave 20% to the foundation, and I want to leave, another amount to another organization, and then another amount to a person, that's a great way to do it, because a lot of people have built up wealth in their retirement accounts. There's a couple I worked with, David and his wife, Josie. David was a UNM alum. He was a presidential scholar, and they really wanted to pay back the generosity that David received by getting this scholarship. It allowed him to have no debt while he was in school. But they also have 2 college-age children, and they can't make the $50,000 gift now. It's just not possible. So what we talked about is, why don't they make the UNM Foundation a percentage beneficiary of David's retirement plan? This is great, partially because when anyone other than a spouse inherits a retirement plan, they have to use the money within 10 years. And as Dorothy said, when they take those funds out, they're going to be taxed on it. So if a 26-year-old inherits an IRA, they're going to have to take that money out in 10 years and add it to their income. So when I am talking to people who have children, I often say, leave them your house, leave them these other assets that have other benefits, because whatever someone gives to the foundation through their IRA comes 100% tax-free, because we are a tax-free entity. So we can make the most of your money while your heirs can enjoy something else that will have some other benefits for them. All right, so the charitable gift annuity is the next most common type. Now, we call this a split interest gift because not only are you making a charitable gift, but you're getting something back. So it's similar to a commercial annuity in that it offers an annual income, but it's got these charitable and tax benefits. So you get fixed income for life. We promise to pay you no matter what happens. The portion of the payments are tax-free. You get a charitable deduction in the year that you create the annuity if you itemize. If you're using appreciated assets such as securities, you can get a break on the capital gains taxes. And then when you have passed away, whatever's remaining in the annuity comes as a planned gift to UNM. So it's a really nice thing, especially for people kind of in their late 70s and above, because the rates get higher with age. So just really quickly, if you're a donor who's 79 years old, the rate for you is 6.2%. So if this donor makes a contribution of $100,000 in cash, they are going to be able to get an annuity payment of $6,200 per year. That's for the rest of their lives. The charitable deduction will be about $46,000, and that can be taken over 5 years on your taxes. So after this annuitant has passed away, the funds are dispersed as follows: 75% to whatever program at UNM, Chemistry Department, College of Education, whatever you'd like, and 25% comes back to the foundation because we are managing the funds. This turned out to be a real great opportunity for this woman in Santa Fe named Jerry, who I dearly love. She's 80 years old. She's looking for extra income in retirement. She's got $25,000 in the bank, earning 1.5, which Dorothy would just say no way to. But she also wants to, so she needs some money, but she also wants to leave a legacy at UNM. So what we decided was, we're going to do a charitable gift annuity that will pay out, this is blocked here for me a little bit, about $1,600 a year at a rate of 6.5%. And then whatever is left will go to the UNM program of her choice. So she's happy with this and writes me all the time about how happy she is. So this is a really sweet story. So the charitable life estate, this is it's a rarer form of planned gift, but it works really well for, I find, single older individuals. So what this is you transfer the ownership of your home or your farm to the foundation while you're living. You get the right to live in the property for as long as you want, as long as your lifetime, as long as you promise to maintain and insure it. You get a tax deduction in the year that the transfer is made. So this has a benefit while you're living, as well as the benefit that's going to come after, which is the house. So Peter, he was 82 and he came to me. He had a house valued very high at $1 million. He was going to plan to leave the home to UNM in his will anyway when he passes, in order to fund an endowment in honor of his brother. But Peter is in a high tax bracket. He could use a tax break right now for his future donation. So what happens is he would enter into a charitable life estate agreement with the UNM Foundation, update the property deed. We would help him do that. He will receive an income tax donation of $843,418. This is based on his age as well as the value of the home. So in the year the gift agreement is finalized. So Peter's also relieved that the estate settlement process will be simplified and accelerated because the house will avoid the probate process. It'll come directly to us through the deed. So a lot of people who live alone, they're worried about who's going to clean up the stuff in the house. That'll be us. This is just a simpler way to do it. And I've got just one more because I know we're past our time. So another form of this is a charitable remainder trust. So this is something that's drafted by a lawyer. It's a tax-exempt, irrevocable trust designed to reduce taxable income by first dispersing income to individuals, the donor, or their heirs for a specified period of time. It's often their whole lifetime, but you can do a period of 10 or 20 years. And then when those people that are benefiting from the income pass away, the charity or charities, you can have multiple charities on a trust like this, get the remainder of the trust. So as I said, you need to go to a lawyer to create the trust and engage a financial institution to administer the trust. But this really works really well for some people. So here's an example. Helen is 65 and Bill is 68. They have a highly appreciated home valued at $1 million in San Francisco. They want to sell it because they don't need it anymore, but they're concerned about the high capital gains tax they'll have to pay. But they do need to keep some of the money. They want to make a gift with a part of the money, but they can't afford to just say, here, it's all yours. So they created a charitable remainder trust that basically turned the home into a lifetime income. So based on the value of the house at 1.5 million and their ages, 65 and 68, they will get $75,000 per year until they pass away. And this does fluctuate because the trust is reevaluated every year. So it may be a little more, a little bit less. When they put the home in the trust to sell, there's no capital gains to pay. So that's a big win for these folks. The creation of the trust will reduce Helen and Bill's current income tax with a charitable income tax deduction of about $531. And then after Helen and Bill pass away, the remaining funds in the trust come to UNM. So I know I talked through these really fast, but there's a whole range of options, and we can find a good fix for somebody who wants to do something after their lifetime. So thank you all.
Thank you, Bonnie.